Hey there, I'm Seth Juarez here in the bowels of the Channel 9 studio here with a special guest for the very first and hopefully one of many Windows Community Stand-Up with Kevin Gallo. Why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
I'm Kevin Gallo. I'm the VP for the developer platform on Windows, which means I'm responsible for making sure that developers have the APIs and tools they need to build great applications.
Fantastic. So I was with you at Bill. We did the recap of day 2. There was a ton of awesome things, and I thought maybe we should do a periodic check-in to see where we're at with these things. Why don't you give us an overview of top platform, top investments, an overview of what we came up with, Bill, and then we can sort of talk about where each one of those things is.
So it was 4 big things. I mean, there's a lot of smaller things, but the 4 big that kind of at least resonate big with me are: we introduced a fluent design system, really enabling great new engagement with great visuals and great user experience. We introduced some new features to the Microsoft Graph with the Project Rome. We also announced that UDP was going to be supporting .NET Standard 2.0, making it easier for developers to modernize their applications. And we brought Ink, again, another installment of Ink capabilities, making Ink even more engaging and easier to use on the desktop.
So let's talk about each of those 4, but before we do, just a reminder, this is all for you. This is a community stand-up. You're the community. If you have questions, bring them up as they come in. I'm going to just rip them off, and we want Kevin to answer the questions. This is for you, the developer. We want you to be excited about Windows development, and I'm excited about some of these things. The one I'm going to start with first is Project Rome and Microsoft Graph. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what these things are and why they're really cool?
So with Project Rome, what we've added is 2 new actions, 2 new nouns and some verbs to the Microsoft Graph. Microsoft Graph is centered around the user. So it knows about you, your documents, everything you've been doing. But it's also more than just documents that you're using. There are your devices. We all know that people have many devices now. I think it's 5 on average, if not more, that people have. And making sure that you can connect them together and build experiences as a developer that leverages the best of each device. Now there's also, once you have these devices, what activities, what actions have happened on those devices. And we now have one endpoint, one way of authenticating where all of those can be centered around the user. We know what you've been doing, what device you've been working on, and which actions happened on which devices. Now we need developers to help us do that, where they can go save that action and log what they've done. And now we're adding new user experience around it with timeline. We're also adding the ability for developers to go pull from that graph and find out what actions they may want to pick up where they left off or continue on different devices.
So let me see if I understand right. So now with the graph, you have the ability to have devices and activities. So I understand the notion of okay, now we know about devices and now we know about activities, but can you give us an example of the kinds of things that you can do just to get developers excited about this?
How about I show you a demo?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we have this Rome bot that we've created. So I'm just go here, launch. We'll do this from the browser. I can type it right.
Very good.
All right, first time. Okay, so I want to say list my devices. So what we've done here very simply with this demo is I've hooked up to Lewis and got natural language processing, and then Lewis connects back into my service, a Rome service. So I can do things like say list my devices. I can type. Now, of course I have to authenticate because it needs to know it's me. So I'll click here. I've already logged in. So now we come up with this very, very simple UI. And what you'll see here is I have a list that goes horizontally of all my devices. Those are my desktops. I even have my phones here. And again, this works not just on Windows devices, but on any devices that the user has. Because we know that people have phones at different devices. They have maybe an iDevice, or they have some sort of Android device, and their Windows devices, because you are you. And any of your devices, you want all connected together. So we now are weaving a connection among all devices that a user has.
Wait, that's impressive, because I think we went too fast here. You're telling me that I could have this device, Windows can be aware of my Android device or my iDevice or whatever device I have.
Yep.
And then you can use that to sort of develop experiences, let's just say with Xamarin type tools, to incorporate other devices.
Yep. And it doesn't require you Xamarin. You can just put a little SDK in there and then log your actions and say, on this device I was running a certain application and I want to start. Or it's like, say, on your Android device, I may be able to say from my desktop saying, you know what, I want to launch this app or this experience on that Android device, and I can cause that action to happen. Because like one of the key things that we hear from developers or even the publishers is they lose customers when they move among their devices. So if I'm using my phone and like I'm kind of frustrated, then I go to my desktop, I just want to continue the actions. If I was typing a long mail, I wanted to format it, the phone's just not necessarily the right device. Maybe it's better for quick actions. And I want to go to the desktop, or say I want to research something and pull in some images. Phone's not always the best device. Same way is if I'm on my desktop and I want to go, hey, okay, I got to leave now, and it's, I always want to continue on my phone while I'm on my commute, I can just go pick up where I left off. So I don't lose the customer as they move among their devices. That's very hard. It's hard enough to get people to pay attention to what your app is or pay attention to your experience, let alone lose them as they move their devices. Now you don't have to.
Well, and the impressive thing is that, like, if they're changing form factors, like, let's just say I log some of the activity graph. I was working on a document on my machine. I log it to the activity graph. I can save where the caret was almost.
Yep.
Can you do that?
That might be a little excessive to save lots of data.
But
you can, yes.
Let's just say you do that, and then when you move to a different form factor, like, it's the user, the form factor, you can change the way your application interacts with where you left off too, right?
And it's not just your app. I can start others' applications as well. So here I'm in a browser running this. I can actually launch, let me get back to make sure I'm on the right device here. I can actually launch any URI. So here I'm going to launch basically a website with Project Rome, of course, Project Rome website. We're talking about Project Rome. So basically by clicking on that bot on the back end, it caused an action to happen and launch this page. But let me do one better, which is I can actually launch an app, the Groove application, to play a specific song. So from the page, I have a UI. If this is an action, say I've been listening to this music, I can now go rehydrate it and restart that application on this device or on any of the other devices just by using the schema.
So you are actually, because I was thinking of just strictly handoff. You're saying they can actually work together to do something.
So imagine you wanted to cause 3 devices to start an experience together in coordination. You can coordinate that among your devices.
Does this work on an Xbox too?
Yep. So it'll work across all of your devices, all of your Windows devices, and your Android and iOS devices.
And so you could make applications that literally you're working on your machine. It's a form factor there. Hey, you know what? I want to see what this looks like on my TV with the Xbox. Push it over there, or you could have another iDevice. I don't know. I mean, it feels like you could make some really rich experience with the knowledge of the devices.
You can either push or pull. This is where I think this unleashes creativity from developers. How are they going to coordinate our device? Because over time, especially as we advance in AI, it's going to be the coordination of these devices that's ultimately going to achieve, productivity and really enhance what the human can go do by combining all of these devices together, which is just dipping our toe in the water here of what we might be able to go do with the graph.
And the thing that to me that's most impressive is that we can make this work with other things that are not necessarily with us. Is it like an SDK you have to install with your app, or when you're making
an app? So there's an SDK that you can call the Rome SDK. You link it into your application, or there's just REST APIs. So the Rome SDK just links it in nicer to allow it to basically be a simpler program interface. And then you get some runtime behavior too, where it's running in the background and it will call you. We also have hooked it into Cortana. So I bring up Cortana here. Cortana actually knows what I've been working on. So it knows that I was looking at Project Rome. It knows, hey, I went and did a search on Google because I work with everybody. Sure. And I had launched Notepad. Or even with Activity Center, it'll go here and list the last the last documents, regardless of which device I had used it. Because who cares what device? These are the last things I was working on. I want to just know them. Regardless of which device I was using it on. It's me. It's all centered around the user.
And that's really cool because I was going to some conference and I show up at the rental car place and I whip out my iPhone and they're like, oh, you work for Microsoft and you have an iPhone? I'm like, yeah, some of the best apps I have were written by like think about productivity when it comes to Word or Excel or OneNote, or even PowerPoint. Yep. Imagine working on something on your device, getting on the plane and it's saying, oh, because now we have internet on the plane, which is magical to me. You can continue to work where you left off with these things.
Yep.
Awesome. So we're getting a couple of questions already, and I want to make sure to get to those as early as possible because questions are the most important thing, so please keep them coming in. Gareth Smith says, will new APIs be added to Windows 10 Mobile as it is not getting new features?
For Windows 10 Mobile, some of the APIs will be added. It will not have exactly the same API set, but some new APIs will come there.
Awesome. Emiliano, are you guys betting on UWP?
Absolutely. Everything we've talked about is a universal Windows platform. So when you think about all the APIs that we're talking about, they come in a couple different flavors. Like one of the things that we added was a bunch of new over 20,000 APIs we added to UWP to support .NET Standard 2.0.
Okay.
We also added a bunch of Win32 APIs. And so we will continue to expand the set of what I call universal APIs. And these are all the APIs that are available to every single app that's built to the Universal Windows platform. And most of them are available when you build a Centennial app for the desktop as well.
Like I said, like the stuff that I saw it build, the stuff that was most exciting to me was being able to log devices and activities, because just those two primitives in the graph allow you to do like a ton of amazing things. Okay, Raymond, is there any work being done to bring more rich desktop controls into the UWP platforms, such as ribbons, toolbars, and tab controls?
So yes, we are. And so one of the things we also announced was the new Fluent Design System. And as part of that, we're releasing a bunch of new controls. I think there's 7 new either controls or features that we've added. We've added a swipe control. We've added a navigation view, very popular. We've added the acrylic, so you have some sort of great 3D blending. We've added perspective parallax, kind of a floating 3D controller works. We added connected animations, allowing you to build really just very beautiful and fluent and keeping the, again, user engaged by allowing them to see the motion. We've also added reveal highlight, again, another great aspect kind of built into all the controls. And then we added one more I'm going blank on, but a couple other ones.
So that was
there's a set of new controls. And one of the things we're also looking for as we look for new features is not just controls that work among all these devices, but even ones that are great just for a specific input type or just for a specific device. So we will, I think they asked us specifically about some sort of commanding structure like a ribbon. So that's something not coming in the Fall Creators Update, but something we're looking for the version after that is, hey, what are the right set of things to make it great, not just across all devices, but on any individual device? And a commanding structure is something that's very, very important, especially on a desktop where you have a lot of rich commands, because you really are creating on the desktop more than you are many of the other devices.
I think it's a good segue then to get fully into Fluent Design, because you mentioned Fluent Design. Tell us a little bit about what Fluent Design is and why it's important.
So Fluent Design, and we say it's a system, not just a design language,
okay,
because we are building a set of platform controls that every developer can go use, and we're building our own experiences on those controls. And so we have the platform pieces that we're building experiences that show it. So people say, okay, how can I see Fluent? Well, you can see it by looking at the Groove app, the music app, you can look at the mapping app. All of them use aspects and highlight aspects of the platform by leveraging the right controls that are built in the right design feature. And we're releasing it as a set of waves. It is a series of waves. So the first wave has these 7 features in it, and then we'll add another wave, they'll build on top of that. This also gives developers time. I get this tension of, hey, I want it all now, but that's way too much.
Yeah.
So I feel like this wave is the right answer, is, hey, we'll give you the next, and then we start to see it evolve over time. So by the time we're done over many iterations, really it'll be radically different, but we brought the user on a journey, we brought the developer on a journey, and in essence allowed the apps to catch up and not have too much difference, because some apps look old, new.
Sure.
We want them all to kind of move forward. And some things we give for free. So even like a lot of the inking stuff that we've done, the developer has to almost do no work to get inking in line or to get some of the some default navigational panels from inking. So you use from your pen, you can get a complete experience and never have to put down your pen.
So do you have anything to show us that can give us a sense for what Fluent looks like?
So probably the best thing is a video.
Okay.
So we have a video we want to show that kind of brings it all together and kind of shows you all those features together.
All right, producer extraordinaire Golnaz is going to cue that up and show it right now. So I was watching that. It looks really cool.
Awesome stuff. I always love seeing it in action.
So let's talk about the SDK. You mentioned something about that beforehand. Why don't you talk about that and tell us what the news we have?
So the news we have is really that the SDK is now available for developers to come down, and it's platform complete. What that means is all the new features coming in the Fall Creators Update are in the product. So those that didn't make it will come in the next version, but developers help us go work out the bugs. And there's really two places to give us feedback. If you find bugs, go give us that in the feedback hub on Windows. As you go, you have a preview, go and run that insider build. And if you really want new features, because one of the things we do is in parallel. Now we're running really twice a year. As we're going in fixing all the bugs in the SDK and finalize the Fall Creators Update, we have actively started the next version. And we want to know what, how prioritize it, figure out the next set of features, keep that coming so that we can use all that in our planning, because we're really only finishing one, starting the other.
Right, and it looks like they put the link up below. So if you want to do that, they really are interested in hearing that. So when you say SDK, are you talking about the Project Rome stuff and the Fluent Design, everything? What are you talking about?
The whole Windows SDK is now platform complete. So all the features that are coming in Windows Fall Creators Update, all those features are now done, and we're really just working through the bugs and making sure that we get polished. Because I know at the end of the day, sometimes missing features are painful, but bugs are just as painful.
Right.
You have to go work around. So help us find them, we'll fix them.
So you're saying everything that we've talked about already, like the Project Rome, the Fluent Design, so they're in the SDK, so we can actually kick the tires on them.
Absolutely.
And when Fall Creators Update comes out, we can do that new release of our application and delight our customers.
Update it and...
Fantastic. So a couple of questions from Ty. The Twitter UWP app has a decent tabbing experience. Is there a similar control coming as a standard UWP control?
So we're definitely looking at a tabbing control as well. So that's on our list, and I think you'll see it as we start planning that next version. There's several controls we want to add as part of Fluent. A couple of them are tabbing control, commanding, a couple other features like that.
Awesome. From M. Cool, did I say that right? Will there be a Fall Creators Update for the Xbox One as well?
Xbox One will also get, I don't know if we'll call it the Fall Creators Update, but the same set of features coming in, the update from Windows will also go to Xbox. It goes to all of our endpoints, not always on the same timeline, but all of them will go to all the endpoints.
Fantastic. The next question from Matt. When is a good time to start investing in UWP? We are mainly doing WPF, and it looks like moving now means we have to rewrite our UI XAML standard. XAML standard sounds promising, but there isn't anything solid yet. Any advice for moving from WPF to UWP?
So what we've done is try to give you it in steps. And so the first step really is allowing you to take your WPF application and put it in the store and start to use all of the new features from UWP. So becoming a Centennial app really is about just redoing the installer, and that again gives you what we call identity, and that lets you hook into the notification system, live tiles, Roam, and it lets us know what the app is. Otherwise we can't really connect with your application and know its identity. So once you've centennialized the applications or used the desktop app converter, I guess is the more conventional name, I keep using the code names, and then your application can leverage all those new APIs. So as a WPF app, you can now start to use a lot of the features. And you're becoming a UWP. So at the end of the day, it's a journey. We're not telling you to rewrite it all from scratch every time. Now, if you want to go to one of our other devices, not the desktop, they only run UWPs.
Right.
But if you're on your desktop, but you want access, say, all the new inking APIs, if you want access to a bunch of the new features that we've added into UWP, you can get access to those by just converting your application and creating a Centennial app out of it.
So you're saying, to this gentleman that phoned in, I'm using old school terms here, who phoned in, look, just take your WPF app, use one of the installers to see if it's ready, move it to Centennial, and you might already just be done right now.
Right, I mean that start. If that gives you enough features, fine. Now when you want to start using Fluent, one of the things we're trying to do is make it easier for WPF developers to start using the new controls. Now, right now it's still pretty hard, and that's something we're looking at for a future release, is hey, if I do want to redo my UI of my application and just kind of evolve it over time, I can begin to do that. Yeah, but right now you have to kind of move to a UWP to get those features.
Yeah, as a dev, I mean, I don't know. When I had to do a new UI, I had to do a new UI. Right? I mean, when .NET had new controls, and I put new controls, and it feels like if it's a new UI, I feel like it's a new UI. I'm a programmer. You're a programmer.
At the end of the day, there's a timing when you realize, okay, it's old. I need new features. I need touch. I need inking. Mm-hmm. I want to be ready for when I have an HMD or something like that. And you have to kind of make that step forward. People went from WinForms or Windows Forms to WPF. The next iteration from WPF is our new Universal XAML.
Yeah, but at the same time, I centennialize or whatever the name of the
Desktop App Converter.
I'm using the Desktop App Converter, but I can start adding stuff for the device graph. I can start adding stuff for the and that's just code that I'm just writing, and I don't have to really change very much to do that, right?
Yeah, it's really two pieces. If you really just want to update some of your business logic and how you integrate with the system and not your UI, the Desktop Bridge is a great solution. If you want to redo your UI, especially say reach the Xbox or reach the HoloLens, then you go into a UWP and you get all of those new rich features.
So that brings me to sort of the next question that I have, because I think this leads to that, because we're talking about past things moving into of present things. Let's talk about Net Standard and XAML Standard. So Net Standard 2.0 came out. Are we reaching feature parity with Net Standard 2.0?
Yep. So with with the Fall Creators Update, we now fully support .NET Standard 2.0. Which I believe gets you the top 70% of all the NuGet packages out there now run completely in UWP. And so we haven't tested them all completely, but we've been getting that test to find all the little bugs that might be gotchas. But from an API point of view, we have all those APIs allowing developers to reuse it. And it's kind of like sometimes like, oh wow, you added all these new APIs. And I'll be a little humble here. Yeah, we kind of caused this problem ourselves when we did UWP. We had this philosophy of, hey, we shouldn't have redundant APIs, only one of everything. And that's sort of where we started, and we realized there's already a huge amount of code, and so asking every developer to change theirs was just kind of the wrong way to go. So by adding this all in, we've allowed all of this well-debugged, great code out there now to run in UWP, making it so much easier for developers to get started.
So for those that don't know what Net Standard is, can you help people understand what it actually means to be Net Standard 2.0 compliant for UWP?
So basically, we went and looked at all of the APIs being used by .NET developers and came up with a common set, whether it was client or server. And so we said, hey, this is the standard set that almost everyone uses, and we want to make sure it's available across Linux, Windows, iOS, Android, and so we have an implementation everywhere that goes and works with those common APIs. That allows developers to use a portable class library, and you can create a DLL that when you run it, when you write this DLL, it'll run on all platforms because you are compliant to that standard.
So Net Standard 2.0 isn't like an SDK. It's a specification of if you are Net Standard 2.0 compliant, you will have all of these APIs.
Yep.
That's awesome. And if you know something is Net Standard 2.0 compliant, for example, on UWP or on Xamarin or iOS, Android, whatever, you know that you can use, if this NuGet package says I'm Net Standard 2.0, I can use it here, use it there, use it there. So that means that for me as a developer, if I'm running my business logic for UWP app and I make it Net Standard 2.0, I can reuse that anywhere.
Right, and I want to also emphasize it's client and server. There are times you want to use the same DLL, like say in validation logic. You have to validate it on the server, but you get a better experience if you also run that code on the client. So not just among your clients, but you can share client and server code as appropriate for your business.
One of the other things that I've been thinking about, right, as I've been wanting to move some of my stuff to UWP, what if I'm using an old WinForms thing and I use Win32 type APIs? Is that something that's available to UWP, or did we nix that?
Let me kind of explain how Win32, COM, WinRT kind of play together.
Okay.
Because the universal I call it API set because it's a combination of what we call calling conventions. Win32 had a flat C API where you hooked up, load library, get module handle, and it does binding. And so there's always a way in the platform of binding the app that has an API and the implementation of it. And we have three core ones in Windows. We have Win32, which has been there for 20, 30 years, whatever it is. We created Win16 and the standard one, but only C++ could really call it. So we ended up having to wrap it a lot. So we created COM, which was more object-oriented rather than flat, and we did things like DirectX are all COM. And then we kind of learned from that and said, how about we create a calling convention that we can have any language do it. So when we write an API now in Windows, I can call from JavaScript, C#, VB, or C++. And I don't have to go do this wrapping. It does it automatically projects into the system. That's called WinRT. So the universal API says a combination of Win32 APIs, some of which we just added. We added named pipes and create process. Okay. Some of the most popular, popular requests.
In fact, Marcus says any plans for create process and similar classic Win32 APIs for WP.
Yep. So we added those two. As part of actually adding .NET Standard 2.0, we literally added a whole bunch of Win32 that even .NET was built on top of. So .NET built a lot of it did wrapping originally, Now, so a lot of the older APIs, we just had to go move over that wrapping on top of Win32. So now the Win32 one is available, the .NET Standard 2.0 is available, and we have WinRT ability to go project new APIs into all of those languages. So it's really just a combination of those three calling conventions. I would
and I think the story there for me is, as a developer, if I've written to the Win32 APIs and I have a ton of code that's based on that, it's nice that I can still use that.
And that's really the benefit. I have code I don't want to touch.
Right.
And most of those APIs are still available on the OS. So I mean, it's clear, it's not just on desktop. Anything in the Universal API set works. Those new Craze processing, those things, those work on those work on HoloLens, those work on Xbox, those work on phone, they work on the desktop, they work on Surface Hubs. So
That's
it's across
awesome.
all of our devices when we add those APIs in.
Okay, so again, keep your questions coming. Your questions are probably the most important thing. I could ask them questions all day, but I'd rather have people ask questions from the audience. The next thing I want to talk about is the ink and input stuff. Tell us about that.
So one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've gotten is too many times I'm using the pen, but to complete my action or to do some sort of a navigation, I had to go either use touch or use the keyboard, and then I put down my pen. So we want to make it so that you never have to put down your pen. You can stay in the flow of what you're doing and writing. So we added a bunch of new capability to do navigation. You can do pan zoom. You can do a bunch of different, you can go into any text box now and start writing it, and the zip pops up right next to it in line, so you can go right, into ink in flow for where the text is versus it used to show up at the bottom, and you would maybe jarring. Okay, I tap here to go do it, and then I have to write down here, and so now I can go right in the flow. So we've added a whole bunch of productivity improvements that no developer has to do really much work at all. You can do the position, you can get more control to get a better integrated experience. We also got a lot of requests to say, hey, can I use ink at a lower layer? We added ink canvas and ink toolbar, which are UI controls in XAML, but there are times that people are building frameworks themselves and they need a lower level of input. So we added inking that works right with the compositor. And so you can get a lower level of inking that you can now integrate more directly into your experience, especially if you're building some sort of middleware library.
Sure.
So those are the two big things that we've added.
Awesome. So you said the word SIP. Did I hear that? What does that mean?
So that's just the input control, text input control that we pop up. So when you click on it, with your pen, it pops up and you can just write into it.
Oh, I see. Now, I will say, I bought my wife, I think it was not the book, but the Surface, the regular Surface, and writing on that thing, like I had seen the demos, okay, and I saw the marketing, and they're like, oh, it feels so nice, but it really does feel nice. And then when I click the thing, it opens the right thing, right?
Yep. When
I click on it, I think it opens OneNote. I can just start writing stuff. It literally felt like something that was really, really, really powerful. And so I'm excited to have that as a developer. All right, questions now. Is there any plans that UWP goes more universal and take on iOS and Android, like some fusion with Xamarin, since Xamarin is in the MS family now?
So in some ways, I think the question's incorrect, I think. It's not that you're going to build a universal app that runs on iOS, Android, because in essence, you have to build native apps for each platform.
Sure.
So I'd reverse it. It's really about code sharing, so that I can share more and more of my code, and when I compile it, it is running literally native on the platform. Running some sort of an abstraction layer on those platforms, especially with the power of those devices, just isn't really what most end users want. They want a native look and feel, but developers just want to be able to share the code. So we're going into a process where you can actually share the code and then compile for each platform and get a native experience on each of those platforms. So with, in essence, .NET Standard, the idea being you can really write, and now with XAML Standard, you can even write your UI and share that UI. So you can write it once, run it everywhere, but it actually is a native app everywhere. And I think versus some sort of everybody building a runtime, and then you have some runtime that runs across all the platforms.
Right.
It just isn't going to perform well. And since everyone now supports this cross-compiling now to the, with these new different middleware libraries,
Sure.
you get native. I mean, Xamarin compiles right down to binary code. There's not some middleware library inside of it. So really, it's write it once, optimize, and then compile it for each of the devices.
So it's not a question of, hey, we're trying to knock you off. It's more of a, use what you like, and we're happy to be there with you.
Yep.
I
and
like
you
that.
can reuse your code.
All right, next question from Michael. Will the Visual Studio 2017 designer support designer things like acrylic or shadows. They put a little note at the top that said VS will support eventually. So I guess the answer is yes.
It will. We're looking at updating the designer. One of the things I think kind of we haven't done as well with Fluent is integrate a lot of those features into the designer built-in Visual Studio. We've been working very heavily with some of the design tools out there, like say Adobe XD, making sure that designers can go and get those features done. But with developers, we really do need to update and refresh the designer in Visual Studio.
Fantastic. So I have ran out of questions. I have a lot of stuff. So we're just going to go with what your questions are from now on. And we'll go as long as you have questions. So please keep them coming. Will all the new APIs be supported on Windows 10 on ARM?
Yes, we already do. So I'm assuming they mean a Windows desktop device on ARM, because all of our phones are ARM. And so we actually, so universal UWPs compile to either x86, x64, or to ARM. And so we will compile them all. We actually recommend that all developers submit all three so we can basically run it on all those devices. And so, yes, we support ARM.
Awesome. Next one, Pierrick, what about accessibility and Fall Creators update for dev? Can we use the new narrator like Palm for Win32 apps? Do you know what that? I don't know what that is. Narrator.
So Narrator already works with Win32 applications. So Narrator is our built-in accessibility tool for those that are vision impaired. And so we have made huge strides. It's not quite where we want it to be. I mean, we have more work to go do to make it have, is there some missing features, say, in comparison to some of the other accessibility tools out there, but we are actively working to make sure that Narrator is the best tool for those who are vision impaired.
So I forgot about something. I was writing, I had to write an app. I wrote a Windows 10 app for the Raspberry Pi for a demo. And I've got to say, look, I have a huge problem with a new app. There's a blank screen problem. And with UWP, like I'm a WinForms guy. I'm an old school WinForms guy. And when you start a UWP app, the blank screen terrified me. There's this new thing called Windows Template Studio that I feel like I need to call out. Why don't you tell people what that is?
So one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten is it's a little hard sometimes to get started with UWP. There's not enough templates. And the way we did templates before is like 5 or 6 canned ones, and they wanted a bit more flexibility. So we created something called Windows Template Studio, where there's a bunch of checkboxes, and it's not a one-time shot. You can come through and say, hey, I want to add certain features, I want certain libraries linked in, I want a certain type of UI. And we're just going to, and it's a community-owned thing, so we're going to evolve it over time, where we're constantly making it easier to start and build, not just an application, but even just add another screen into your application. So say you want another UI or another dialogue or another functional UI, you can go back and use this Template Studio to go create that. And so we are definitely trying to make it easier to that kicking off point of how do I just start? Because WinForms really was one of the easiest ways, and still is, to just get a quick, dirty UI up and running and build a simple application. Even if you don't want it to be stunning, you just need some functional UI. The beautiful thing with Fluent and our new UWP, it'll be beautiful even if you just do it quick.
That's right. Well, and I'll say, like I said, I had an existing application where I literally just had one page and things like updating with MVVM, and it was garbage. When I used Template Studio, I had a full application with 3 tabs that showed everything that was happening, and this was running on my Raspberry Pi. It wasn't like I was doing it, like I was trying to kick the tires, because I like to see if these things work. And like I said, Raspberry Pi, beautiful demo, and it was a little robot that I was driving with an Xbox controller. It was fantastic, and so that's one thing I want to call. All right, so a couple of questions. Nimral, UWP is universal, right? Will it come to server as server apps, like WordPress blog hosted on Windows Server Core, Nano deployed in UWP Tech, instead of current Nano server deployment, which is like Desktop Bridge?
It's a great question. It's actually a debate we've constantly had is what is our equivalent on the server of UWP? Should UWP be the same API set as server? Same thing we've thought about with IoT, and we're trying to think about what is the right level of API support for server. So you don't bring in too much and you don't bring in too little. Like sometimes for server, you probably don't want all the UI stuff.
Right.
So we're thinking about a headless UWP API set definition. We haven't standardized it yet, but we're thinking really, really hard about what would that be for those who want server and IoT, where there is no complex graphical UI.
I see.
Because you don't want those APIs. Actually, it's the largest part of one of the larger parts of Windows
is
the graphical subsystem. And when you're running on server or IoT, you just don't want to bring all of that goo in.
Right.
Not goo, it's good goo, but
all of that. It's goo. I mean, it's what glues everything together. I mean, and when we're talking about Nano Server, the idea behind Nano Server is that there really is no UI.
Right. Or you have very, very simple LED-based UI or something simple like that. But we are thinking about server and IoT together, saying there should be a headless UWP definition. And if there's anybody with feedback on what they think, hey, send us feedback, because we're thinking about it. We haven't defined that yet. I'm cautious because I don't want to create lots of subsets of UWP. I like UWP being one API set. If you start factoring it, then it's not universal anymore.
It's not universal.
But this headless version of it makes sense. You need something that doesn't have UI, a graphical UI, we'll say. And then because it's just too big a subsystem to bring along.
All right, from Ty, is there an effort in making APIs that extend Windows, which traditionally is purely in Win32 COM, to be more modern, UWP-like?
I'm not really sure what that question means.
Yeah, is there an effort in making APIs that extend Windows? Like, can you extend Windows?
So we are not introducing new Win32 or COM APIs. Every new API that we release, we do using WinRT, which, to be honest, is just an evolution of COM. If you actually look behind the scenes, we took iDispatch and said, oh, wow, iDispatch had discoverability of properties. So I can know what the properties and names are, and we added that into what we call WinRT.
Okay.
So we're really not, when we add Win32 APIs, we're really just typically just adding in the old ones that we already had. And every new API is WinRT because then we can call from JavaScript, C#, C++. It's just a better calling convention. And so that's how we're adding that. Cool. I think they're asking for, are you going to add abilities to do new hardware type innovation or something the lower level in the system? Yes, and we'll still expose those through WinRT. Okay. There's no reason WinRT is a high level. No, I can do all sorts of low level I/O through a WinRT API. It's just a calling convention.
Cool. From Jason, any plans for UWP APIs to allow developers to hide the system, Chrome, and apps like the title bar?
So a bunch of the windowing APIs, I would say the biggest gap we've probably got UWP is we haven't added all the windowing APIs like hiding Chrome or changing the Chrome or moving windows. And that's something that's clearly, if you go to user voice, you can hear people asking for that feature. That's something we're looking to add in the next versions.
Awesome. Next question, is there a way to show a UWP on dual screens or more at launch?
This actually literally is the exact same thing about windowing. Is part of, it's not quite the same because you need to go to your displays a little bit, but we kind of consider it the same of being able to target different windows at different displays. So they're sort of the same, but not, but they connect up. We know there's a gap of being able to control what window it's on, which display it's on, and be able to move between those displays. So that's a gap right now at UWP, and we're trying to close that gap.
Awesome. All right. Well, keep your questions coming. I have another question. This is, I think, the first Windows Community Stand-Up. Are you planning on doing more?
Absolutely. I will come as many times as you invite me.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions coming through. I'm going to ask the gerbils in the back. Do we have any more questions? What's that? They're saying no. Okay, they're working on it. They're getting more questions. So here's a couple more questions. Have you seen anybody use some of these features in like really interesting applications that we've been talking about, like Project Rome, like Fluent Design?
So we have a bunch of teams inside of Microsoft that are going and doing that. And Story Remix is one that we highlighted at Build.
That's right.
That really, I think, went and showed it. Some of the other ones I probably can't talk about.
Right.
But that's one where we actually looked at the application. And I want to be careful. We have a team that builds apps, and this is the ones who build the Groove app, the music, the different applications. And they sort of see their job as validating some of these features and help us make sure we get them right. But they also want to make sure they use the platform in a way that's creative for the end user, not just a technical demonstration. Right. And I thought that was really something that the Story Remix guys did great, is it's just a great app. And it used these features because it made their app great. And so we are looking across the board for how do we go in some place, lead the charge with our own experiences. But many times we've created these because our experiences lacked features. And so a lot of what we do at Rome, we had some early incubations, and then the team came by and said, hey, we need this feature, this feature, this feature. And then we added a whole bunch into Rome that allowed us to go across all these devices. Because cool. The apps drove us, in essence, to go innovate in the platform. I think it's sometimes tension, but it's a great cooperation between the apps and the platform kind of working together to build the right set of features.
Yeah, because I've seen too often people write apps just to show this feature. And really, that's not a user-centered thing.
No.
And so that's what I like about what you're saying, is you're saying that the apps team are trying to write good apps and they're like, hey, I'm trying to write this good app and this thing isn't there. Can you put it there?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, we almost have a bar sometimes on the platform, which is if there's no app that's using it in a meaningful way, not a tech demo way, but in a meaningful way, we don't release some of the APIs.
Okay, that's cool.
So I know sometimes, oh no, I want it. 9 times out of 10, you get the API wrong.
No, I know. And
You think you have it right, and then they're like, yeah, not really.
It's like you go to the store and it's too late and you really want that donut, but do you really? I mean, you eat it and you're just like, I don't feel good about this.
Yeah.
Okay, love it. Sean, what about my internal apps? What is UWP doing for helping do data-rich applications?
So one of the things we're looking at going forward, so in the Fall Creators Update, we have some features. We work with the Telerik controls that were released that have a lot of data forms and data visualization controls. But we're looking very heavily at helping focus on our line of business developers and our enterprise developers. I feel like we need to add more of these data-centric features, data-centric controls, and optimizing the tooling experience. This is where I talked about investments we want to make in the Visual Studio Designer. Going forward, we really want to make sure that we're making it very, very simple to build these line of business applications. Now, to be honest, we haven't done well since probably WinForms. WPF did some, but even WPF was a kind of a big hammer sometimes for that task.
Sure.
And yet there's tons of apps, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands probably of these applications that are very, very data centric. And really we need to just make it turnkey simple to build them and build them well.
Awesome. So we do have a lot of questions. They're just like working on it. Akash asks, are there any connected animations baked into the templates?
So most of the connected animations are baked into the controls themselves, and there's some work that a developer needs to do. So if you want to say have, so maybe a picture that you want to move, so as you click, it changes from one form to another or changes to a layout. You do need to annotate to tell us, hey, I want this one to be where this one ends up. So we will run the animations, the connected animations, but the developer kind of needs to tell us, these two are the same object, please link them together. So there's a little bit of code that the developer has to write, and then we handle all of the fluidity, the animations, moving it across the curve, and so all of that motion we handle. But the developer needs to tell us sort of the start and end points behind it.
Cool. So the great Billy Hollis, my friend here, is asking, how about reference apps for UWP? The ecosystem still needs a pattern to work from for complex apps for desktop and mobile.
Yeah, that's probably a gap that we probably need to look at. We've thought about some of these first-party apps that we have built, like say Story Remix. Should we go open source them all, and let people see how we wrote the code? Typically, the app developers aren't always feeling like they're ready, but it's something we've looked at, trying to get some great examples out there of complex apps. And even the source code behind those complex applications. But more and more, we are seeing complex apps getting built on UWP as it matures, as we round out the feature set. And I think with .NET Standard 2.0, you're going to see a lot more of the existing code that people have written come to UWP.
Awesome. From Colin, can you talk to the kind of 3D features in 2D UWP apps that will show up in 3D with HoloLens?
This is something where we're playing right now. We've looked at a few different options about how 2D and 3D can work together. And so, we don't really have anything to share. We've done a bunch of visual explorations. To be honest, my words would be inadequate. There is literally no way in words I can describe 2D and 3D. Every time I've tried, everybody stares at you, you show a picture, they go, oh, that's what you meant? Yeah, I never got that.
Yeah,
I feel like we'd have to come back maybe and talk a bit about that with pictures and videos.
Absolutely.
It's just too hard to explain.
It's like we're programmers trying to explain visual things.
Yeah, that's why I showed the video of the fluent stuff.
The video was good. Tony, what's the status regarding app extensions and specifically component UIs in UWP?
So we are definitely looking at trying to make sure that more and more scenarios can work and be supported through component UI. We've focused initially on making sure we had great browser isolation, because we've been asked for that numerous times, as developers want to be able to host a web page in their app, and if they happen to host, say, like a YouTube site and it crashed, they don't want their app coming down.
Right.
So we've done that with Component UI, which allows you to host UI from other applications and isolate both security and stability.
I see.
And it's not fully there yet. I mean, you can do some things with it. It's got some limitations. We're continuing to evolve that. I'd say kick the tires and tell me what's missing in the Fall Creators Update, and we'll look at what we can go add. It's one of these slow burn features because it is extremely hard to get the general case complete.
Okay.
Because it's just two apps that are unknown to us. Stitching them together is sort of hard. Olay automation, and it was very, very challenging.
And then you can say, it's alive, and then hope for the best, right?
Yes.
All right, from Dima, there was XAML breakpoints sometime early for bindings and states. Will it be available to UWP?
I thought some of those, I think, are coming in. I'm not sure which exact of those features, but yes, you can do some of the binding in states. I thought you could. I don't know what the XAML
I remember they had that visual tree where you could actually click and it would highlight things, and then it would stop, and you could actually change things in line. And
Yeah,
so
I
that
think
was
they
something I
want to
did
put
see.
breakpoints in there versus breakpoints in your code. And I'm not sure exactly that. I'd need more. I need to see the exact sample to know what they're trying to go do.
Got it. From Juice, any plans to extend the Dial API on UWP? I would love to use it in conjunction with HoloLens mixed reality devices.
That I do not know.
Looks like it says at the top, we did some Dial API improvements in, I don't even know what that means. What's RS3?
RS3 is our code name for the Fall Creators update.
Okay. So
it's a lot more succinct.
Okay. Awesome. From Light Magic Apps, are you going to support legacy shell Windows APIs like the taskbar, icon, progress bar?
We're debating this. I'll be honest. This is a little bit why we haven't released some of the APIs UWP for windowing. Is we're debating, like, some of these can be incredibly misused, and so we have debated, because we are very worried about malware, and some of the windowing APIs allow you to pop windows above it and fake it. So we were trying. I'll be honest. We got a little caught in the security versus power capability of what do you do with windowing APIs, because it is so easy to abuse them, and so. We have to go through that and figure out which of the APIs we're going to expose. And sometimes we have this, what we call a capability model, where we can know and greenlight some apps to be able to call certain APIs and other ones cannot, or be able to do certain actions with it. And so certain things like, say, being able to call certain APIs on the system, like store APIs, are only can be done by the store app, which is itself a UWP. But we only grant that capability to the store app because nobody else should be allowed to do purchases.
Yeah, that would be.
And we can do the same thing here. We can then say, okay, there's a set of apps that may need this feature, but we can audit them a little better. And unknown publishers would not be able to call some of those because they may actually be malware, and we'll vet them a little bit more deeply.
Got it.
So we use this capability model to control a little bit of some of these features we worry about can be abused.
And I like that store deployed apps are different, right? Because there is a lot of vetting that goes on beforehand, and there's a lot of safety to doing that. Will you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we feel very strongly that we have a customer promise from the store. So if you come to our store and you get an application, we can't prevent every possible app from being, either maliciously overtaken, but we can very quickly react to it, revoke a capability, or pull the app, and make sure that the store itself has high quality applications that are end user friendly, and really are also parental controls are followed. Right. Especially if you go to Xbox, like you don't want your kid getting something that was not appropriate for their age level because someone published it and lied about the rating. Sure. And so we drive very, very hard to make sure that we have a great customer promise, that we have trust from end users, and developers want that trust too. Because anything you get randomly from a website, I've typed in every now and then. You type it in, you search for something, you close your eyes, and you hope it doesn't destroy your machine.
Cross our fingers.
Yes.
All right, so for Michael, does the new design language mean that skeuomorphic apps are coming back? Is Fluent the same as skeuomorphism?
Oh, wow. No.
Okay. I didn't think so.
My design team would die if you call it skeuomorphic.
We will not mention this ever again.
No.
It's not skeuomorphism. They will all die, and then what are we going to do? You're going to be in trouble for killing all our design team, Michael. Thank you for that. So why is it different?
Oh, well, again, I don't know if I want to get into that. I'd have Albert come here and he can talk about what skeuomorphic
is. asking a bunch of programmers. Tell us
some high-level designer explanation that would be beyond me.
And by the way, Albert did come on to our show at Build, and he did talk about the 4 elements. I think there were 4. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but he was very precise about what it was, and it wasn't about making things look like it was real. It was about making things look like they belonged.
Yes, and especially if you think about it in the virtual world, you want a digital representation of the real world, like your digital image, it's the digital shadow, whatever it is inside of that world. But it's got a look that you design, but it's designed to look like it was placed and it's a digital representation. It's not meant to be a fake real world thing. And it's just, we try to not try and pretend it's real when it's
Got
not
it.
real. But it's in your world, so it has to operate like with physics and behave the way you'd expect it to behave.
So we only have about 10 minutes left, so get the rest of your questions in. We'll go until there's no more. Bill asks, is there anything being done to further improve UI speed in UWP? Identical code written in WPF feels much faster in general when interacting with UI controls. I would think that UWP, being a leaner platform, should be faster on the same machine. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would love to see the code he wrote. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd need samples, so maybe connect up and understand, because I haven't seen that. I mean, we write all of our applications in UWP now, and the shell is written to it, and we are optimizing it like crazy. The whole start menu is written in Universal XAML, and that thing starts fast, and it's loaded in all the time. So we are spending a lot of effort to tune it, also be battery friendly, making sure that we don't burn too much battery. As we, like, for example, acrylic adds more transparency, which by itself could easily add more battery consumption. So we're spending time to make sure that just to get the cool look in the animations, we're not burning battery.
I see.
And so we do just a lot of tuning. So I would love to see the example of what doesn't work as well. Sometimes you write code to one platform and you do a cheap port of it, and sometimes that doesn't always feel the same, or maybe you need to do it a different way. And other times maybe there was a bug. Maybe we're running into a bug that we need to fix in the system. So I'd love to go see that code.
Yeah, because I'm looking at, for example, when I open the control panel, that's a UWP app now, right?
Everything you see drawn now is a UWP. Anything we write, all UI, is pretty much written to UWP in Windows.
Okay, so from Peter, will UWP applications be able to use 3D assets such as those generated in Paint 3D or from Remix 3D?
So we are looking, so you can use them, but we don't have a default 3D viewer control.
Okay.
That's one of the things that's on our list, is to add a 3D viewer control, so you can very easily take any 3D object, embed it in your application, and have it just work within the UI. It's part of those, what are the 2D, 3D controls, the 3D controls that work in 2D, or 2D that work in 3D. It's a set of features we're adding, looking to add.
Fantastic. From Nirmal, high-fidelity apps like Visual Studio, Audacity, Adobe Apps, even Desktop, Office, etc., require features that are not available in current iteration of UWP. Will it be coming? Are there workarounds or future work on this?
So we are absolutely trying to close the gap in the features. What slows us down a little bit is we've debated whether or not to just poke a hole in the container and give you access. The challenge with that is we are, in essence, still not protecting the end user from some of these applications, because as we saw with some of the security attacks out there, they attack apps.
Yeah.
And so even if the app didn't maliciously want it to be, they also have extensibility that needs to be sandboxed. And so we were trying to do those features in a way that, one, make sure we can guarantee security, two, can work across different device types, and three, allows the right level of control, so that you don't get like every feature, you get only the features that you ask for.
Sure.
Or the capabilities. So every time someone says, I'm missing features, I say, please send us the list. Because we are very quickly trying to close that gap so that there is no app that you can't build with the UWP. In essence, UWP should be more powerful than Win32. Even though it has these security measures, we should be able to, by granting these capabilities, allow you to build any application experience.
Awesome. From John Shu, will it continue? Will it support communication between two apps, UWP or UWP WPF, through sockets in the same PC? UWP restricts local network now. It looks like they're looking for sockets. Is that available?
Yeah, this is so. I think the challenge is we have some restrictions on calling into the local network, and I've been pushing hard on this one, getting it fixed. I don't think it's changed the full Creators Update, but it's something we are looking to go fix.
Awesome.
In the right way, because there again,
there's
a bunch of security challenges associated with it. We know like every security attack that's out there, and our security team goes, well, here's the 15 ways someone can exploit it. Let's make sure we don't just open it up, have those exploits, and then UWP gets a reputation for being easily a malware platform. So we're balancing. I know frustration, but when those security exploits come in, let me tell you, people are way more frustrated.
Yeah,
I've seen the signs from the WannaCry stuff. I mean, and everybody did want to cry.
Scary. Like, all I know is that the first time I wrote a socket app, I flooded some port with UDP packets, and then my machine got blacklisted. So that was the first time I'd ever done sockets. So I was officially a hacker at that time, or opening sockets. So I can see not necessarily the trepidation, but the concern, and we need to be careful about aligning these things to good security practices, right?
And what we tend to do is we release it more controlled, make sure we got it right, and then we open it up more as we go.
Awesome. So we're going to do 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Where do you see Continuum going in the future?
I think it's a great feature. I think we're going to see more and more of us making sure that experiences can cross device form factors. You'll be connecting them more and more to each other. So what is the compute device from what's a display device is going to, I think, over time even be split more. We talk about, oh yeah, I want to be able to run on any device. Well, I want any device to be able to present to any screen. Will I be running local compute, or will I be running it in some sort of a display where the display is different than maybe the device? And so like taking your phone and being able to run a desktop application with a larger screen that you've connected to the phone, absolutely. Universal apps clearly there can provide a great experience because we can just download the right UI for the form factor.
Awesome. From Tony to finish up, will there be a way for UWP apps to run outside of an app container in side-loading scenarios?
We have debated that one heavily too.
That's another security one.
As of right now, we do not allow you to turn off the app container when you're running a UWP. In some ways, you say, oh, I'm side-loading it, so I trust it. Well, the problem is that's also what the hackers go after. They go after the ones that don't have the container around it. I can see that for maybe IoT scenarios or something where you need full access to the hardware and it's already isolated from the world. But if you're an internet-connected device, that app container is a good thing.
Yeah, it's like it's a safety thing.
It really is.
Fantastic. So to wrap up, why don't you wrap up some of the things that we talked about today that you're most excited about, and then maybe talk about future.
So again, we are announcing that the SDK is platform complete. Go kick the tires on it. Help us find any issues there, so our customers, including you, but also all the other developer community, will get the benefit of finding those issues. As far as new features, because now you can go leverage these and get ready for the launch of the Fall Creators Update. I think using the new features of Fluent clearly, are just going to help your application look great, feel modern, get more engagement. If you use Ink, you can integrate Ink more deeply into your application, though you already get some for free. Roam and adding your activities to the graph, you can create adaptive cards that visualize it. You saw some of those that I showed. Go add them to the graph. You want your activities in the graph so that users will see them and be able to take action on them. You don't want to be able to say, oh, look, I have notifications, I can resume the other guy's competitive app and not yours.
I see.
And to share code, .NET Standard is just a great way to be able to focus and be able to share the code. More than ever, you'll be able to start to move your applications from being a traditional desktop application to being a universal Windows app and get all the new benefits there.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully we'll do another Windows Community Stand-Up sometime soon when we have stuff to announce. Again, thanks for spending some time with us, Kevin. It's always great to have you. It's always good to have you as well. We are very keen on answering your questions. We had a ton of good questions. If there's questions we did not answer or there's some features, there's the user voice that we brought up earlier that you can go to so that you can voice your opinion about what needs to happen. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.
Again, this is the Windows Community Stand-Up here on Channel 9. It's been live. We'll see you next time. Take care.